Hello everyone, you're just joining in I Literary Heaven, the Literary Nook by Fairy. Let's start our today's topic, but before going further, don't forget to subscribe the channel, like the videos and share. So my today's topic is the characters in the play The Tempest by William Shakespeare. Antonio is a wealthy merchant in the city of Venice. He is a leading citizen commanding great respect. When he's first introduced to us in the play, he's in a melancholic mood. His friend asks him if he is feeling melancholy because all his ships are at sea, facing all sorts of dangers from storms and from rocks. But he tells them that he is not at all feeling worried about the safety of his ships. He then tells them that his melancholy is something natural to him, something temperamental or inborn. He says that he looks upon the world as a stage or a theatre on which every man has to play a part. His part is being that of a sad man. Thus, melancholy may be regarded as one of the most principal traits of his character, and this kind of melancholy is also known as constitutional melancholy. Another major trait of Antonio's character is his capacity for friendship and his profound affection for Bassanio. Indeed, the friendship of Antonio and Bassanio is one of the romantic elements in the play because this friendship has been idealized and glorified by Shakespeare. Bassanio and once before taken a loan from Antonio but had not repaid it, and now again he needs money badly, and this time he again asks Antonio for a loan. Antonio has no cash in hand at the moment, and yet he would not like to disappoint his friend. He therefore bids Bassanio approach some moneylender in the city and takes a loan on his behalf. Bassanio approaches Shylock, who is a Jew and a professional moneylender, and asks for a loan of 3,000 ducats in Antonio's name. Antonio then signs a bond which seems to be potentially dangerous, but which Antonio signs, regardless of degree which it implies. There is in it a clause according to which Shylock would be entitled to cut off a pound of Antonio's flesh from nearest his heart in case Antonio fails to repay the loan within a period of 3 months. Antonio willingly signs the bond to meet the needs of his friend Bassanio, and this act on his part shows how much he loves Bassanio. He's really a friend in need. He's willing to risk his life for the sake of his friends. Antonio is a kind-hearted man who lends money to needy people without charging any interest from them. In this respect, he offers a striking contrast to Shylock, who is a usurer. Although Antonio is a man who wins our respect and admiration because of his fine qualities, yet he also suffers from a serious defect. As a Christian, he shows an intolerance towards the Jews. He hates Shylock because Shylock is a usurer, but even more because Shylock is a Jew. This religious or racial intolerance on his part somewhat lowers him in our estimation. In fact, Antonio goes out of his way to insult and degrade Shylock. On many occasions, he has abused Shylock, even spat on his clothes. His reason for treating Shylock is a usurer and a Jew. And even when he's asking Shylock for a loan, he says that in future also he would abuse him and spit on him. He tells Shylock that he wants a loan from him not as a friend but as an enemy. There was certainly in those days a general prejudice against the Jews, but we would expect a nice man like Antonio to be free from a prejudice of that kind. Antonio is perfect gentleman, but his religious fanaticism is undoubtedly a flaw in his character. Antonio also suffers from a deficiency. He doesn't have much of sense of humor, as he is continuously a melancholic man. He is unable to laugh much. He cannot enjoy a joke. He is certainly incapable of uh, making a joke. He doesn't approve of gratuitous, flippant, and light-hearted talk. Himself a man of few words, he doesn't approve of gratuitous glibness or cruelty. And being a serious-minded man, he is also unable to enjoy such merrymaking as torchlight, masked processions in which Lorenzo and others take great pleasure. Another important character is Shylock. He is one of the best known characters in the entire range of Shakespearean drama. He is also a controversial character. Some critics and readers regarded him as thorough villain, while others believe that in spite of his villainy, he deserves some sympathy also. It is necessary for us, therefore, to assess this man's character impartially. He certainly has his hateful traits of character, certainly deserves to be called a villain, but we still feel some sympathy for him because, in our opinion, he is not only a wrongdoer but also a victim of wrongdoing by others also. By profession, Sherlock is a money lender. Money lending by itself is not something shameful or and discreditable, but or degrading or even objectionable. However, money lending becomes something odious if a money lender becomes an exploiter by charging excessive rates of interest. Shylock is a money lender who tries to enrich himself and to accumulate wealth by exploiting the financial needs of others. One reason why he hates Antonio is that Antonio lends money to needy person without charging any interest at all, and Antonio thus brings down the rate of interest in Venice. Shylock has already hoarded a lot of wealth by his usury, but his craving for more money is not yet satisfied. This makes him a contemptible person in this play, and in this respect, he is a typical Jew, and the Jews have traditionally been regarded as usurers. It is only in our times that the Jews have been able to shed that image. Today, the Jews are regarded as a versatile race of people possessing many gifts and talents. Shylock repels us not only by his usury but also by his religious intolerance. He hates Christians, he hates them fiercely. At one point in the play, he says in an aside that he hates Antonio firstly because Antonio is a Christian, secondly, because Antonio brings down the rates of interest in Venice by lending money great. And as a Jew, Shylock doesn't eat pork, and he would not therefore like to join the Christian at a dinner where pork has been served as one of their dishes. This much we can understand and accept. Everybody has a right to eat a certain kind of meat and also right to eat meat together or not. Everybody has even the right not to attend a dinner where meat is to be served. But nobody should hate others because they eat or meat or a particular kind of meat. In this respect, as in all other respects, tolerance is the right attitudes to adopt. But Shylock makes pork eating one of the grounds for his hatred of Christians who are pork eaters. And in one of his speeches, he refers to the biblical story of the manner in which Christ had lured the devil to enter into the body of a pig. However, this is a very minor issue in the play. Eventually, Shylock does agree to attend a Christian dinner, and his reason for attending it further lowers him in our estimation. He would like to eat at the expense of the Christians who are extravagant and would spend money needlessly. By eating a meal at the expense of the Christians, he can save a little money at home, and this is the height of the miserliness and meanness. Shylock is a deceitful and crafty man. At first, he expresses his unwillingness to give a loan to Antonio on the ground that Antonio had been ill treating him. He then agrees to give him the loan, but he lays down the condition that the bond would be signed should contain a clause according to which he would be entitled to cut off a pound of Antonio's flesh from nearest his heart if Antonio fails to repay the loan within the period of 3 months. So he here shows himself a cunning, hypocritical, humble, as well as the arrogant man. He even cites a biblical incident to justify the charging of interest, though he admits that this incident is not exactly a precedent but only a parallel to prove the validity of charging some kind of fee for the services which one renders to others. In any case, the whole scene in which the transaction takes place reveals Shylock's character in an unfavorable light. He here appears as a detestable person deserving our dislike or hatred. Among the heroines created by Shakespeare, Portia occupies a high position. She produces a powerful impression on our minds. Her role in the play is most conspicuous and memorable. When the play The Merchant of Venus is mentioned anywhere, people think of two persons, namely Shylock and Portia. And these two persons are inseparable from each other in our minds because we remember Shylock chiefly as a villain wanting to take the life of his enemy Antonio, and we think of Portia as the person who defeats Shylock's evil design. And of course, Portia has other qualities also to impart a measure of greatness to her. Portia is a lady with a cheerful and optimistic disposition. She has a strong sense of humor and a sparkling wit, which she shows in the very beginning and then continues to show till the very end. It is only on one occasion in the whole play that she feels melancholy and even sick of the world. When she is first introduced to us, she tells Nerissa that she is feeling weary of the world, but this melancholy mood lasts only for a few minutes and dispelled as soon as Nerissa begins to talk to her about the various suitors who have arrived at Belmont to try their luck at the casket. Portia has something very amusing to say about each of these four suitors. Her comment on her English suitor is perhaps the most amusing, and the comment ends with her saying that the Englishman perhaps bought his doublet in Italy, his round house in France, his bonnet in Germany, and his behavior everywhere. Subsequently, she shows a sense of humor in setting the ring story afoot and bringing it to an end, which gives rise to plenty of mirth and laughter. Portia's comments on her various suitors show also her powers of minute observation and her penetrating judgment of human character. Portia is genuinely devoted to the memory of her father, who, while dying, devised a kind of lottery for the purpose of the choice of her husband. She is determined to carry out the terms of her late father's will. Of course, it is possible for her to disregard her father's will and to marry a man on the basis of her own judgment, but she has implicit faith in her father's wisdom. She is convinced that her father's will would prove to be the means for her getting the right man as her husband. And in this belief, she is greatly encouraged by Nerissa, who tells her that good men are sometimes divinely inspired when they are dying, and then they take sound decisions. Having fallen in love with Bassanio, Portia could easily have married him without subjecting him to the test laid down by her father in his will. But she doesn't follow such a course. Even the man with whom she has fallen in love must prove his worth by passing the test before she should marry him, nor does she give him any hint as to the casket which he should choose. Portia shows her wisdom in other ways as well. Her conversation with Nerissa at the very outset of the play contains some valuable remarks which are well worded maxims. For instance, she says that it is a good divine who follows his own instructions. She also says that she can easier teach 20 teachings, and in fact, her speech to Nerissa on this occasion is a series of aphoristic statements containing the gems of wisdom. Later in the play, she again makes similar remarks which shows her wisdom and her vast knowledge of the world and of the human nature. For instance, she says that a good deed shines in a naughty world just as a candle shines in the darkness of the night. She also says that nothing is good if it is not seen in this proper context. She makes a similar remark when she says that the many things appear to be praiseworthy and perfect when they are looked at in the right perspective, but her wisdom appears in the most striking manner in trial scene in the course of which she is able to turn the table upon Shylock and defeat him with the same weapon with which he wanted to take Antonio's life. Although Portia is a woman with a powerful intellect, extraordinary power of reasoning, she yet remains a woman at heart with a lot of modesty, humility, and compassion. When she disguises herself as a man, she succeeds eminently in playing a masculine role, but on all other occasions, she shows that modesty lends to woman the grace and, as we can say, the charm which makes her a lovable person. When Bassanio puts his hand on the lead casket, she feels overwhelmed by a feeling of ecstasy and is hardly able to restrain her feeling on this occasion. When he actually opened the lead casket and finding her picture in it, claims her with a kiss. She makes a speech which embodies the very spirit of humility. She describes herself as an unschooled, unlessoned, unpracticed woman, and then goes on to make a complete surrender of herself to the man who has won her as his wife. So the next one is Bassanio. If Antonio is the hero of the bone story, Bassanio is the hero of the casket story. Of course, he's not a hero in the absolute sense of the word, but he's certainly a romantic hero who is able to win the heroine Portia as his wife. When we meet Bassanio first, we find him in need of money. He already owes some money to his friend Antonio, and now he approaches that friend of his with a request for another loan. He admits that he's always been spending more money than he could afford. He also acknowledged the fact that he's already under a debt to Antonio. But he also expresses his sincere desire to repay the first loan while asking for the second one. And then to prove his point, he agrees that if Antonio gives him a second loan, he would stand a much greater chance of getting back the amount of the first loan in addition to getting back the amount of the second one. And he supports his arguments by citing his own experience as a schoolboy when by shooting an arrow in the same direction in which he had shot the first arrow and lost it. He used to recover both the arrows, and this is a very plausible way of arguing the case. And we must give due credit to him in this context. Of course, we can also here interpret his argument differently and say that he is using only a trick to be able to extract a second loan from a gullible person, but Antonio's deep love for him is a proof of the fact that Bassanio was not a trickster. Bassanio is certainly a romantic lover, having something of the poet in him. Describing Portia to Antonio, he says that she's fairer than the world. He compares her to the Cato's daughter, and Brutus Portia. Then he compares her sunny locks of hair to the golden fleece, compares her suitors to the many Jasons who went to the cloisters to win the golden fleece. Later, he speaks in poetic manner about the beauty of Portia's picture, and thus we can have no doubt at all about his imaginative, romantic, and poetical qualities, definitely. So Bassanio has a dual nature. On the one hand, he is devoted to Antonio. He is a reserved and melancholy kind of man, the silent type, speaking very little. On the other hand, he is fond of company of men like Grotanius, Larius, Salonio, all of whom are jovial, talkative, boisterous fellow. And on the whole, he may be regarded as a man with a healthy and optimistic outlook upon life. It is because of his handsome appearance, excellent manner, combined with his sense of humor and witty manner of speaking, that Portia falls in love with him, even before he makes his choice of casket. Even Nerissa is greatly impressed by his personality and his behavior. She is sincerely and ardently desires his success in his choice of a casket, and his prodigality as a small fault, which by no means disqualifies him as a suitor whose success in the test of the casket is desired by all that comes out of the test which flying colors. And his success is, of course, the result of his understanding of the world and his knowledge of the human nature. He is not a shallow kind of person. The speeches which he makes before choosing a casket show his essential wisdom. When it comes to Belmont, his chief motive in trying to win Portia is to marry an heiress who owns a vast estate and is also exceptionally beautiful. However, the comments which he makes on the various caskets shows that he is not at all a greedy man. He knows that the appearances and the deceptive and that the world is always deceived with ornament. He then gives several examples from the spheres of law, religion, to prove that every vice in this world puts on an outward appearance of the virtue. He speaks of the covens who wear the birds of the Hercules and fronds of Mars, and speaks of women using pens and powders and false hair to look beautiful and alluring. Nor we can doubt his sincerity in friendship. He has a deep and a genuine affection for Antonio. His anxiety about Antonio's safety clearly shows that. On learning that Antonio has fallen into the clutches of the Jew, he feels extremely dejected and then tries desperately to save his friend's life. Having plenty of money with him after his marriage with Portia, he is willing to offer any amount of it to Shylock to induce him to give up his demand for a pound of flesh from Antonio's body. And when the judgment in favor of Antonio and against the Jew has been delivered, he voluntarily offered 3,000 ducats to judge as a gift. And then, at Antonio's request, he parts with Portia's ring to gratify the judge's desire, even though he knows that his giving away the ring would mean some trouble with Portia when he returns home. In short, his true love for Portia, his true friendship for Antonio, and his generous nature makes him a lovable man. The next one is Britannia. Is a very talkative and witty man. Indeed, his garrulity is his most striking trait, and this trait would have repelled us if his talk had not been witty. He has a keen sense of humor, an infinite capacity for talk, a fertile wit. He is never short of words. Almost every remark of his that he makes is amusing in one way or another. Antonio, who is a serious minded man, doesn't relish Antonio's ceaseless talk, which is nothing but chatter for his ears. And even Bassanio says that Gretanio talks an infinite deal of nothing and there is a very little real sense in his talk. Bassanio expresses the view that the sense in Gretonio's talk may be compared to two grains of the wheat hidden in the large heap of a chaff or straw. However, Bassanio doesn't feel much upset by Gretonio's endless talk, though he does have some apprehension that Gretonio's glib tongue would create some embarrassing moments for him at Belmont. He feels it necessary to get a promise from Gaetanio not to talk too much at Belmont before agreeing to the Gaetanio's request that he should take him there. Gaetanio makes a substantial contribution to the comedy of the play. The Merchant of Venice is a romantic comedy, which means that it is a play containing both romantic and comic elements in an ample pleasure. If Bassanio is the man who contributes greatly to the romantic character of the play, so Gratanio is the man who contributes equally greatly to the play's comic character. His comment on Antonio's melancholy in the very beginning of the play shows the big difference between these two men. Gretanio says that he cannot understand why a man should feel sad at all. He asks why a man whose blood is warm within should sit still and motionless like his grandfather's statue. And then he asks why a man should creep into the jaundice by being peevish. By contrast, with Antonio's role as a sad man on the world stage, Gretanio's role is that of a fool or a jester who would like to grow old with mirth or laughter. Gretanio ridicules men who try to win respect by remaining silent so as to appear thoughtful and wise. He ridicules the man who talks in tones of Sir Oracle, who wants others to stop talking as soon as he opens his mouth to say something. Gratanius promised to Basanius to exercise restraint upon his natural effusiveness, and boasteriness is another example of his witty and manner of speaking. He tells Bassanio that he would swear only occasionally at Belmont that he would carry prayer books and his projects, and then he would put on a solemn expression when grace before meal is being said. And indeed, Gratanius' wit has a large share in the comedy of the play The Merchant of Venus. He shows his wit even in the trial scene, which is on the whole a very serious scene and bordering almost on tragedy. And here his wit is ironical and sarcastic. And here his wit has an incisive quality which produces a devastating effect on the Jews. He repeats the words which Shylock had originally used when Shylock thought that he had won the case against Antonio, but Gratanio repeats those words in a tone of mockery and ridicule so as to aggravate the mental torture which Shylock is going through on finding that he has completely lost the case. The words Gratanio speaks are, "O Jew, an upright judge, a learned judge, and then a second Daniel. I think the Jew for the teaching me that word." He also suggests mocking that the Jew should be given a halter grace so that he may hang himself. Indeed, Gretanio's wit here becomes bitter, even fierce or violent. His wit takes even the form of abuse and denunciation. He calls Shylock a damned cussed dog. He also says that Shylock was in his previous life a wolf because his desire in his present life are wolfish, bloody, and starved. Gretanu is by no means a person who can only talk in a jovial and a flippant manner. One or two of his speeches show that he is essentially a discerning man who has observed this world with close attention and who has become fairly shrewd in judging people and things. On one occasion, he makes a speech describing the decline in a man's enthusiasm for something which had originally inspired a good deal of eagerness and zest in him. Nobody, he says, gets up from a feast with the same keen appetite which he had sat down to it. Similarly, while a horse runs very fast in the beginning, it runs very slow when it is coming back to the starting point. When a ship sails away, it looks splendid, but when it returns, presents a sad spectacle because its body has been greatly damaged and its sails look worn out on account of the strong winds and the furious storms which the ship had to endure in the course of its long voyage. And the essence of this whole speech is found in the following lines: all things that are with more spirit chased than enjoyed. Gratanio is by no means a novice in the affairs of the world. Gratanio's visit to Belmont doesn't prove to be futile. He is able to win Nerissa as his wife. He is able to do so without having to go through so ordeal with Bassanio has to go through in order to win Portia. Gretonio was able to coax Nerissa into agreeing to marry him even though she had laid down a condition. She had promised to marry him if Bassanio succeeded in winning Portia as his wife. He is on the whole a pleasing young man with considerable knowledge of world and of human nature. Nor do we have any doubt that he would make a good husband for Nerissa, who is herself a highly intelligent woman with his penetrating judgment of the human characters as her mistress Portia is. He and Nerissa are indeed well matched and make an excellent pair. The next one is Lorenzo, a Christian young man who is able somehow to capture the heart of Jessica, the daughter of Shylock the Jew. He seems to be a smart and a dashing young man with a handsome appearance and active mind. He must, of course, have taken the initiative in making Jessica acquaintance and then winning her heart. Lorenzo is an adventurous young man and is prepared to face the danger for the sake of his love, readily agrees to Jessica's plan to run away from home and join him when he would be leading a masked procession through the city streets at the time of night. Lorenzo has a keen sense of humor, also a capacity for making witty remarks. When Gratanio describes the silent kind of man, Lorenzo says that he certainly belongs to the class of the such silent men because Gratanio himself talks so much that he doesn't allow him to talk at all. I must be one of these some dumb wise men, says Lorenzo. He also gives evidence of his wit when he tells his friends that when their turn comes to meet their beloveds, he would wait for them with the same patience which they have shown in waiting for him. So Lorenzo expresses a high opinion about Antonio, telling Portia that Antonio is a true gentleman and dear friend of Bassanio. He also wins Portia's confidence by his apparent good nature and trust worthiness. On the whole, Lorenzo is a very likable young man who contributes greatly to the romantic atmosphere of the play. The next one is Jessica, daughter of Jew Shylock, but a daughter who is ashamed of having that man as a father. She finds the atmosphere of her father's home to be suffocating and almost intolerable. She is a sensitive girl having an artistic temperament. She is unable to endure the narrow-mindedness and merciless and tyrannical nature of her father, although her father is a fanatical Jew who is intolerant of Christians. Jessica impresses the Christian Lorenzo as a very beautiful, wise, and faithful girl, and she strikes us as a charming girl with a strong sense of humor and a poetical nature. Lorenzo tells his friends that he would place her in his constant soul, meaning that he would always remain loyal to her for his sake. She doesn't mind giving up her own religion and becoming a Christian. Jessica's artistic and poetic temperament manifests itself clearly in the moonlight scenes at Belmont. Jessica is basically a modest girl, even though she takes the initiative in eloping with Lorenzo. It is because she is feeling desperate that she decided to quit her father's home. Jessica is certainly not devoid of a sense of humor. She likes Lancelot because he keeps her amused with his light-hearted talk and jokes. As already indicated, Jessica is certainly guilty of having disgraced for her father and having done a great damage to her reputation, even though his reputation is already not a good one. By running away from the home and stealing her father's money and jewels, a daughter brings great shame to her father, who would then not be able to show his face to his neighbors and acquaintances. Such behavior on the part of the daughter is never approved by anyone in any society or community. Jessica contributes to the romantic atmosphere of the play and considerably to the interest of the plot. She is the heroine of the romantic Lorenzo Jessica subplot, and her role in the moonlight scene at Belmont is important because it enhances the romantic or the political qualities of the play. The next one is Nerissa, is waiting maid of Portia. Actually, she is more of the companion to Portia than a maid servant. The main point to note about Nerissa is the possess almost all those qualities which Portia has, but possesses those qualities in a much lesser degree. She may almost regarded as another Portia, though a greatly diminished and reduced scale. In her talk and her actions, she is almost an echo of her mistress. We could even call her an imitation of Portia, though we certainly do not imply thereby any contempt or scorn for her. And Nerissa strikes us as a highly intelligent woman who understands Portia's nature and character well. Nerissa has a strong sense of humor and is capable of making witty remarks just as she is capable of making wise ones. Nerissa feels very happy at Bassanio's choice of right casket, and she offers her best wishes and congratulations to both Portia and Bassanio. And the next one is Lancelot Gobbo. He is the servant and the first of the Jews and later of the Christian Bassanio, but is not only a merely servant. Shakespeare described him as a clown, meaning that he is a jester too. The word fool is also used for a person of that kind in Shakespearean drama, and as a clown or a fool or a jester, Lancelot Gobbo makes a substantial contribution to the comedy of the play, and he is not a clever and intellectual clown as a certain others clowns repeated or created by Shakespeare. Much of humor of Lancelot talks of a crude or a farcical kind, and the same is true of his behavior and conduct. His fooling of his aged blind father is not only crude of farcical but also in a very bad taste. He tells his father the young master Lancelot has died, and this sort of thing fills us with disgust. He is not devoid of feeling or sentiment. While leaving Jessica after having given up his job under Shylock, he becomes quite sentimental. His role in the play, apart from his contribution to the comedy of the play, is very slight. He does a service to Jessica by carrying a letter from her to her lover Lorenzo. That was all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay connected for more literary videos. Me, Fairy, signing out from the Literary Nook by Fairy.